President Trump is not just changing American foreign policy. He is reorienting America's moral compass, a compass that has been firmly set since the country's founding almost 250 years ago.
Okay, here we go again. Fareed Zakaria, CNN's favorite globalist mouthpiece, telling us how Trump is ruining America because he didn't grovel at Zelensky's feet. Let me guess, Trump is undermining democracy, changing its moral compass, and somehow this all means we should blindly send Ukraine another blank check, right? Look, Fareed, I know you love to sound sophisticated, but let's be real. This analysis is as deep as a kiddie pool. You completely ignore why Trump and JD Vance weren't just rolling over for Zelensky's pity party. And lucky for you, I've got a little something called an actual analysis of what really happened to break it all down. But before I completely destroy your hyperbole, let's see what other nonsense you can spew.
America as a superpower sometimes acted unwisely in places like Vietnam and Iraq and Afghanistan. But even in those cases, it saw its involvement as the protection of freedom and democracy. Not anymore. The strangest aspect of the last few weeks of American diplomacy that culminated in the disaster at the White House on Friday is that the President of the United States has seemed utterly unwilling to say plainly that he supports the victim of aggression against the aggressor and that he admires Ukrainian democracy more than Russian dictatorship. Instead, he and Vice President Vance spent Friday's photo op at the White House publicly scolding Ukraine's President Zelensky, telling him to say thank you, which he has said repeatedly, and accusing him of being disrespectful. Zelensky's fault was simply to point out that Ukraine had in fact signed a ceasefire deal with Putin in 2015 in Minsk, but that Putin had continually violated it ever since then. Trump used the occasion to remind all that he felt a special bond with Vladimir Putin. Zelensky did not handle himself well. He got emotional, responded too often, and took the bait that Vice President Vance laid for him. He should have studied how President Macron and Prime Minister Starmer handled Trump. Constant flattery and deference. Churchill said of his relationship with his American counterpart, "No lover ever studied every whim of his mistress as I did those of Franklin Roosevelt." But he's a man leading a nation at war that has lost tens of thousands of people. He is fighting for his very survival. And he and his nation are fighting for the values of freedom and democracy that America has supported since its founding, against a rapacious dictatorship in this case that actively seeks to undermine the United States, its interests, and its allies at every turn. It shouldn't be hard to figure out where your sympathies lie. Friday's turn of events took place after weeks of diplomacy in which the Trump administration has bullied its neighbors, asked Canada to cease to exist as a country, pressured Denmark to sell Greenland, and Panama to hand over the Panama Canal. It has threatened to impose higher tariffs on its allies than its foes, and it has shuttered almost all the food and medicine programs that it promised to the poorest people in the world. The conservative former British cabinet minister Rory Stewart asked in sorrow, was it for this that the U.S. spent 80 years building power and alliances? Not to be a force for good, but instead to impoverish neighbors, threaten those it protected, rob minerals from war-torn countries, and break its promises to hundreds of millions of the poorest in the world? President Trump is not just changing American foreign policy. He is reorienting America's moral compass, a compass that has been firmly set since the country's founding almost 250 years ago.
Oh, you mean the moral compass that under Biden sent billions to Ukraine while we can't even secure our own border? That moral compass. Yeah, how dare Trump not treat Zelensky like a fragile little prince? How dare JD Vance ask Ukraine's leader to actually say thank you for the billions we've already sent? I mean, really, Fareed, how dare America demand accountability for once? All right, class, let's review what actually went down, because unlike Zakaria, we look deeper than superficial hyperbolic partisan bullshit. See, what Fareed won't tell you is that Zelensky planned this entire press conference stunt. He had a private meeting with Trump before the cameras rolled, and guess what? He didn't bring up these grievances then. Nope. Instead, he used the press conference as a stage to try and guilt-trip America into another blank check. It was a blatant attempt to manipulate the American people. Zelensky wanted to lecture Trump, hoping to pressure him into folding, maybe even getting him to agree to allowing Ukraine into NATO. But guess what? Trump isn't Biden. His objective is to stop the killing and avoid World War III. He's not here to write unlimited checks with your tax dollars and bow to a so-called hero who is in actuality a dictator. And Vance? He saw right through it too. That's why he called Zelensky out for never showing gratitude. But really, it was because he tried to manipulate the situation. But Zakaria ignores all of this because, shocker, his entire shtick is making Trump look bad. The reality? Zelensky got bold, took his shot, and it blew up in his face. Trump wasn't going to sit there and take a lecture from a guy begging for unlimited resources and endless cash. So Fareed, next time you want to whine about America's moral compass, maybe ask yourself, should we really be throwing billions more at a leader who thinks he's entitled, or should we finally start putting America first? So there you have it. That's the real story, folks. Zelensky thought he could play the victim and guilt-trip Trump into another blank check, or even more. But Trump and JD Vance weren't falling for it. And no matter how much CNN and Fareed Zakaria try to spin it, the facts don't lie. If you're tired of the mainstream media's nonsense, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we're cutting through the lies and getting straight to the truth. Should America keep funding Ukraine, or is it time to stop? Let me know what you think in the comments. Head over to steadfastandloyal.com for more stories just like this. Trust me, you won't find this kind of real talk anywhere else. See you next time. I'm Jimmy Parker.